All right, welcome to Frontline. 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. It begins with some breaking news from Waynesboro, Virginia, where an Afghan man, I know, right, weird, with ties to ISIS-K was just arrested. Oh, and how did he get here? Oh, that's right, the program known as Biden's Operation Allies. Trump needs to shut this down right now. More on this, Senator Markwayne Mullin in just a few minutes. Also, President Trump today doing away with Biden's burdensome automobile standards.
We're officially terminating Joe Biden's ridiculously burdensome, horrible, actually, CAFE standards that imposed expensive restrictions and all sorts of problems, gave all sorts of problems to automakers.
Roll coal, baby. Making gas consumption great again, now that it's under $3. And a bipartisan group of lawmakers calling on Attorney General Pam Bondi to brief them on the potential hurdles on releasing the Epstein files. They want an answer by Friday. I actually want it by today, but whatever. First, Trump's bans travel from 19 countries. I'd round it up to make it even 70, but I'll take what I can get at this point. Let's do this. We told you about the framework of what needed to be done on immigration yesterday, and like clockwork, it's being done today. I mean, weird. You're not wasting your time with us every night, folks. 19 countries with total or at least partial travel bans imposed effective immediately. And cue the outrage from the woman from one of the banned countries who ironically presides over the majority Somali district, now here in America, that just so happens to also be the terror recruiting capital of the country. She also graced us with her opinion on why she thinks Trump is doing this.
He's always been a racist, a bigot, a xenophobic, and Islamophobic. We know that he called African nations a shithole in his first administration. We know that when he came down that escalator, he said he was going to stop Muslim immigration.
Oh, you sound mad, Ilhan. Trump's never lets her get away with anything. Roll this.
They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. It's a fraud. She tries to deny it now, but you can't really deny it because, you know, it just happened. She shouldn't be allowed to be a congresswoman, and I'm sure people are looking at that. And she should be thrown the hell out of our country.
She's only a congresswoman because Barack Obama imported 80,000 Somalis and put them in her district. I mean, like, he was on one today. It was great. Well, I mean, like, how about this? Why should we let people in from those places, Ilhan? I mean, here they are. Can anyone give me one good reason to take anybody from any of these places? Like, how does this help America? I mean, the recent D.C. shooter was from Afghanistan, so you can see how that made the list. Places like Chad, Iran, Laos, the Republic of the Congo. Are they sending us any leading experts in, like, I don't know, any industry whatsoever? No, sure aren't. I mean, what are those countries known for? Like, I'm trying to think, rocket innovation, international math championships, medical innovation. Nope, none of those. Chad has almost calendar-based coups, child soldiers serving in Boko Haram, Burma, known for ethnic cleansing and their meth production, of course. Now, Eritrea, like, I've been to Africa. I'd never even heard of this place till today. They haven't had an election since 1993 with their primary commerce centering around slavery. Yeah, bring those guys in, right. Sierra Leone, blood diamonds, so if you need a cheap engagement ring, I guess, but they're also mined with child labor. They also specialize in, this is a good one, limb amputations as a form of punishment. We don't do that here in America. So maybe leave them on the sidelines. Yemen, that's where the Iran-backed Houthis are based. I mean, do you want any of these people here in America? I sure don't. Like, I realize we're a Christian nation and we've been overly generous for years, but what's it gotten us? Like, we got our own problems right now. That's the harsh reality. Most of these people who would or even have come here, they don't have the cultural awareness, okay, to assimilate to American values, let alone want to, even if some of them could. So guess what? I'm sorry you were born into that. Like, genuinely, I really am. I don't want anybody to suffer. But I'm done having their problems become our problems. And I tell you what, Libs, I'll make a deal with you. We can do that. We can have all those people welcomed in if you start getting every veteran off the street. You eliminate the federal income tax, scrap the Fed, and make sure every actual American can eat on their own dime. Then we can have the conversation about other countries' problems. Not now. I'm done with that. We're doing this new thing called America First. I'm glad it's been reinvigorated in the last week. So, like, if there's no net gain for America, sorry, too bad. So, with the exception of Cuba and Haiti, also, there's like 30 to 50 other countries that are closer than us that they can go to. America's free ride's got to be over. But dealing with this, some of these ones are hard. Also, there's some things that have to be addressed. Like, why are people like Mary Moriarty, whose office in Minnesota let Somalian Muhammad off they let him off on some easy plea deal for rape, no prison time, and then he went out and real shocker here, did it again. Why is that woman opposing ICE getting people from dumps that I just explained who are here illegally? Why is she opposing getting him out of her city?
There are reports that the Trump administration is planning to send ICE agents here to the Twin Cities to target our neighbors of Somali descent. This is part of a recent pattern to single out our Somali community members. This is rooted in the idea that if they spew hatred, it will divide us.
Wrong. This is about getting illegals and people who don't live within our laws out of here.
There are no roving gangs of Somali people in this community harassing, threatening, doing anything to any of our community members. And let me repeat that again, because I've heard this often. There are no roving gangs of Somalis targeting or harassing or doing anything inappropriate to any community members. Those are simply lies.
No, actually, they're not lies. In addition to the one you just let out of jail. Yes, there are actually a lot. They just aren't reporting it because all the local media are sycophantic liberals that write vanilla headlines like this. 2 charged with machine gun possession following Twin Cities high school graduation ceremony shootings. And who is that written by? Let's look at the bio she put up herself. Uba Ali, Somali-American TV reporter in the Twin Cities. Well, no wonder the headline didn't read, imported Somali gangs shoot at each other at a high school graduation with illegal full-auto pistols. I mean, in fact, the only reference to the Somali community in that article is, quote, an emergency closed-door meeting was held Wednesday in response to a wave of violence that has left the Somali community shaken and ready for solution. Well, here comes the Trump train with your solution, lady. Get these people the heck out of here. Because if you read down in the article, we're talking like page 2, they don't even mention the nationality of the shooters, but they do name them. And we looked them up. Hamza, Saeed, and Amir Ali. Yeah, those sound like good homegrown Minnesota farm boys, right? No. All part of the narrative, though. Also, city prosecutors like Mary Moriarty and her haircut can do TikTok videos going out there saying, oh, look, there's no reports of Somali gangs. There's no reports of them, but they're happening. I don't know if she's like mentally deficient in making the correlation between the Somali culture and these things that we used to do in law enforcement called patterns. Trump laid this out today.
Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other.
I mean, yeah, and surprise, they come here and they do the same thing for a lot of parts. Mary Moriarty's like just determined to keep them here for some reason.
Our office at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office here will not assist in any way, shape, or form in any of these ICE raids.
Who saw that coming? I mean, like, fine. You want to stay out of the way? Go ahead. And what did I say yesterday? Pam Bondi better throw the book at this woman and anyone else that even so much as text somebody about warning about an ICE raid or anything else. Minnesota officials are literally telling us that this list right here, that one that you see scrolling on the thing, okay, this is just from last month, okay? There's hundreds of names. Rape, assault, stalking, violations of protective orders, in large part committed by the imported Somali population, which, by the way, why would you, like, I don't even understand. Why would you resettle from the desert in Africa to like negative 32 degrees snowy Minnesota? Whatever. But ignoring all that, she's telling people this.
From our small business owners to our healthcare workers, to our Lyft and Uber drivers, to children growing up in Cedar Riverside and families shopping at the Carmel Mall, Our Somali community members are what makes Minneapolis one of the finest places in the world to live.
By what metric? I mean, Minnesota is a beautiful state. I've hunted there. I've been there. There are some great people. Not so much in Minneapolis, but it's definitely now not one of the finest places in the world to live. First off, that fine community that you say you care so much about, lady, just had 78 Somali people charged for fraudulently taking $1 billion from the community that you're supposed to protect. And then some of it was sent over to terrorists. Why would you not want to get people like that out of there? My only conclusion is mental illness, or they just hate Trump so much he's broken them. Because this deportation ain't a new concept.
If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up.
If they've committed transgressions of whatever kind, they should be obviously deported.
We will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes.
And to think the governor of that state is catering to the literally attempted replacement of American culture. The guy who ran on his military service, albeit he lied a bunch about it, but he ran on it. Democrats wanted the head of that state, Tim Walz, as their VP. I mean, good Lord, we dodged a bullet with that guy. Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin, sir, this is not a hard concept. Bad out, keep good in.
Well, listen, Carl, we're either a nation of laws or a lawless nation. Every one of these individuals that have migrated here legally, they left a country because it was probably a third world country, that it was a lawless country. They wanted to come here to have a new start. They wanted to come here for better opportunities, not to have the same thing. But you have these individuals that came to this country illegally. What incentive would they have to actually comply by our laws? And now when we try to get them out, you have Democrat lawmakers that are protecting them. You go, is this really anti-police or anti-American? Because you really do have to have this conversation. Right. Because what separates us from the other countries is we enforce our laws. And these illegals that came here illegally, they're federal fugitives. You can say whatever you want. The Democrats want to make this about immigration. It wants to make this about migrants. They want to make this about, the migrant communities. It has nothing to do with that. It has us simply enforcing our nation's laws so everybody will have the same opportunity to thrive, period. And if you broke the law, go home. And by the way, if you came over here as a guest and you broke a law, go home too. And we're just happy to enforce it. Now, you played the clips all ago. Clinton talked about this. Obama talked about this. And guess what? The only one doing something about it is President Trump.
Yeah.
We should be thanking him, not fighting him on this.
Right, I know. And obviously I'm speaking to a lawmaker. Normally I'd say, can we make a law about this? But we already have a ton of laws, and they're just not abiding by them, including...
We do.
In New Orleans. ICE ramped up operations today, and their police chief out there is telling people to call 911 if they're approached by an ICE agent. Watch this.
We have experienced reports in this city, and I'm sure in St. Paul also, where people call to say that there's folks that are masked, that they're not sure if they're law enforcement, that they may be kidnapping people. We have had those reports. I want to be clear to the community. The community should know that if you see something like that, that is legitimate, that you don't know if someone is law enforcement, you should call 911.
That was the Minnesota police chief, and they're also doing this in New Orleans too.
Doesn't he sound just like Mark Kelly? Sowing a little bit of a doubt and dissent there, which is exactly why you see the attacks on law enforcement with ICE up over 1,000%, when they're just simply supposed to be doing their job. And here's the police chief that is saying this. Why aren't you just out there helping them? I mean, why are you allowing them to come in and get the criminals that's on your streets that you probably knew about, but you just chose to do nothing about? But that's what you see when you have a blue city ran by Democrats, and why they have a lawless country or a lawless city. And the good thing about President Trump is he's doing a full approach on our drug and human trafficking and crime across the country, because when you see crime-ridden cities, you'll see crime and drugs and human trafficking following it. So it's, the Democrats now are griping about his narco boats that he's sinking, and he's sending these people to the depth of the ocean. Thank goodness. As you know this, Carl, we've lost more on our lawless streets because of drugs In 2024, there was over 66,500 individuals that died of drug overdoses, and that's more than the entire Vietnam War, which we lost just over 56,000 individuals. And you're griping that President Trump is trying to do this? So you see this full frontal attack on these criminals, that the president is attacking them in our international waters and sinking their boats and keeping the products from coming in, and then he's using DHS and ICE to break down the drug rings, human trafficking rings that's taking place in our cities, and yet the Democrats are fighting us every step of the way, which goes to really, you got to really think about this. It's more about anti-America approach. I mean, do you think Omar really loves our country?
No.
The country, by the way, that took her in, that gave her an opportunity to actually become a lawmaker, which she could have never even done in her own country. Yeah. She doesn't love our country. She wants to change our country. And you're going, okay, well, if you go back to where you came from then. I have no love lost for you if you want to leave. Zero issue with that.
But, I mean, let's be clear, too. Like, her father was a high-ranking military officer in a government that was committing genocide. And the reason she had to flee here is because the people, when the government collapsed, they wanted to, go after her family and kill them. And we took them in at our good graces. I want to get to your bill, though. You just had a bill that was signed by President Trump into law. Tell us about it.
Well, it's 988, which is a suicide hotline for our veterans. You think about what happens in your community and in our community. You have veterans that are in a desperate need, and they finally decide that they're going to call for help, which is a hard step because they feel like once that finally happens, they're going to be targeted, right? They finally have to admit they need help, and they make a phone call, and they get a busy dial, or they say the line's disconnected. What we had was the 988 line was so susceptible to cyber attacks that it was completely shut down for 24 hours. And what we did is just said, hey, we got to strengthen this, and we got to make sure that they're not getting a answer machine or getting someone saying, hey, we'll call you back. But when the veteran calls, they have an expert on the phone that's giving them the help, much like we have in our office. We have a gentleman named Sergeant Barnes who was blown up in Iraq and lost his hips. And he runs this program for us, and we work close with law enforcement. So when a veteran calls our office, Sergeant Barnes immediately will get on the phone with them, or if he doesn't answer the hotline himself, and we will have law enforcement go out there, but not law enforcement blaring sirens. That can be bad, but ones that understand the situation, has been trained in the situation to do a wellness check on the individual. And we wasn't treating our national hotline the same way that we treat our local hotline. So we took the experience we have on the state level, and we brought it to the national level.
Yeah, and I from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for doing this. I've had 8 friends now either attempt or succeed in killing themselves since leaving the battlefield. So this means a lot. Senator Markwayne Mullin, we appreciate it, sir.
Brother, appreciate you.
All right. Coming up, after years of sky-high prices and bidding wars in the U.S. housing market, is it cracking? We're going to break this down later in the show. But first, he indicted the president twice, and now tables have turned. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan subpoenaed former special counsel Jack Smith. Going to put him in the hot seat. The man himself joins me next.
Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
Before Charlie Kirk died, he issued a stark warning of terrifying dangers ahead in a new book, Pagan Threat, authored by Pastor Lucas Miles. Charlie said Pagan Threat could save America and that you must read it. Get Pagan Threat free with Newsmax's special offer. Plus, get Dick Morse's new book, The Real Charlie Kirk. 2 great books with our free offer today.
You might take something for your heart. You might get support for your joints. Or even use something for your digestion. So why wouldn't you take something for the most important part of you? Your brain. People all over the country take Prevagen for their brain. In fact, Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years. The most important supplement for the most important part of you. Try Prevagen for your brain today.
Hi, I'm Ben Cozy. Isn't holiday travel a pain in the neck? You're cramped, uncomfortable, and forget about getting any rest. There's nothing cozy about airplane seats or hard plastic benches, and those so-called travel pillows, they just don't cut it. You don't need another travel pillow. You need Be Cozy, the world's most comfortable neck pillow. Trapped in the middle seat? Wrap Be Cozy around your neck to stop chin drop, bobblehead napping. Smashed up against the window? fold Be Cozy over and tuck it onto your shoulder for super side support. Frequent flyer miles got you sitting aisle? Turn Be Cozy to the side for the perfect pillow position. Hey, everyone wants to be cozy, so get the world's most comfortable travel neck pillow and be cozy like me, Ben Cozy. You get to be cozy. Everyone gets a Be Cozy. Only Be Cozy has patented overlapping arms so you get double support and the comfort you need in any seat on any trip. Go online right now and get this special holiday offer. Buy one Be Cozy, get one 50% off. So don't wait, get yours now.
What goes around comes around. In a bold move to hold the weaponized justice system accountable, House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan has issued a subpoena to former special counsel Jack Smith, finally, demanding testimony and documents related to his handling of the 2020 election investigation of President Trump. In a letter accompanying his request, Congressman Jim Jordan wrote, "Due to your service as special counsel, the committee believes that you possess information that is vital to its oversight of this matter." Jack Smith has been mandated to appear in front of the committee at a closed-door session 2 weeks from today on December 17th. For me, yeah, it's about accountability, but it's also, I want to make this guy sweat because I really hate that dude. Keep in mind, his credibility is basically in the toilet as far as I'm concerned after his last conviction of the Virginia governor was overturned by the Supreme Court. Yeah. The man leading that charge, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Sir, these investigations are great. I'm glad you're doing them. I hope we get answers. I'm a little upset it's behind closed doors, but when do we get to put some bracelets and throw some people in jail?
Well, your questions one I get all the time from constituents in the 4th District of Ohio and around the country, and it's that very question. When is someone going to jail, Jordan? And I always remind them, we can't indict anyone, we can't prosecute anyone, only the Justice Department can. What we can do is oversight, which we're under the Constitution required to do. We do that. If there's some legislative remedy that makes sense, some bill we need to pass to help with the situation, we'll look at that and do that. We've done that on this injunction issue already, passed that through our committee and through the House. But our main job is to do oversight, to get the facts there and see what that means for what we can do. And if we think there's some crime, we can do a referral. So we have done that for one of Jack Smith's top deputies, Thomas Wyndham, who when we brought him in, we felt was totally trying to obstruct our investigation. So we referred him to the Justice Department. We did it for John Brennan because he came in and lied to us. Well, that's going to the Justice Department. They will determine if there are charges. We said we referred him to the Justice Department for obstructing a congressional investigation. We referred John Brennan for lying to Congress. So those are now with the Justice Department. We'll see what they do. But we don't do these referrals very often. Yeah, right. It's got to be there. It's got to be the fact. It's got to be warranted, or we don't do it. With Jack Smith now, in light of what we've learned over the last several months, and frankly for even longer, gag order on the president, surveilling half the Republican members of Congress, getting their phone logs. For me, it was 2.5 years. Yeah. For 2.5 years, they got the phone logs. Who I called, who called me, when I called him, how long the call lasts, and if I initiated the call, where I was at when that happened. That's because they can pattern your life then. That is crazy. But this guy did that to me and a bunch of other Americans. Yeah. Not just members of Congress, but a bunch of other Americans. So we want to have him in, and we're going to ask him questions about that and a host of other things that we think are important, and then we'll go from there. And there may, in fact, be a public hearing, but the beauty of these depositions is you get an hour for Republicans and an hour for Democrats, and then back to an hour for Republicans, not just 5 minutes like you get in a hearing. You get all day long, and that's where you get the information that's helpful in getting to the truth. Yeah,
I can't wait to hear what goes on. I got to get you on something else here. A new audit has found billions of taxpayer dollars were wasted in healthcare fraud and Affordable Health Care Act plans, including one single social. Remember the Democrats? There's no fraud. We're not doing anything. Republicans are responsible for high prices. No, wrong, because one Social Security number was used to institute 125 insurance policy applications.
Yep. And 66,000 times you had the Social Security number used multiple times, all kinds of stuff. You had fictitious people that the GAO did this study. Just some fictitious person felt false Social Security number, didn't fill out the application right, and they would get accepted into this plan, and then the subsidy, the payment goes out to the insurance company, the fraud that exists in this program. And Democrats just want us to renew that. Instead of like actually working on something that would lower premiums, they just want us to continue the expanded Obamacare subsidies to insurance companies. And we're saying, how about a better approach? Subsidies, which always drive up costs, that's not the way to go. How about choice and competition with health savings accounts, association health plans, all those kind of ideas that truly are going to help families and lower costs. So that's the debate. But this study that we asked our committee, Ways and Means Committee, and the Energy and Commerce Committee asked the GAO to do this study, and it's pretty powerful findings that they found. Yeah. The level of abuse, the level of fraud.
Sir, real quick, I got about a minute left here, and the Biden auto pens. Trump says, hey, they're all null and void. What happens now?
Well, I mean, the whole country already knows that this, unfortunately, Joe Biden was just not up to the task of being president. We all sort of saw that, particularly in that debate. But I think in order to get some kind of maybe criminal liability, we're almost probably going to have a whistleblower who comes forward and says, yeah, the process, because Joe Biden said, I have a process, certain protocols have to be followed, and then the auto pen was used. But if we got someone who comes forward and said it wasn't, there was no process in place, no protocols that were followed, and they're willing to testify to that, then I think you got a case. Other than that, I think it's tough to prove. But I do think the country's already figured it all out.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping they just start prosecuting people, and then we'll get a bunch of stuff in discovery, which will be cool. Congressman Jim Jordan, pleasure as always, sir.
You bet. Thanks, Carl.
All right. Coming up, the same people who covered up Joe Biden's mental decline for years are now commenting on whether or not Trump dozed off during his 3-hour cabinet meeting yesterday. How about you guys sit this one out? We got that in our Culture Clash.
Hi, I'm Katrina Zish. I've worked on the red carpet, I've worked at Vogue magazine, and now I work at Newsmax, and I couldn't be happier because it's all about bringing the most important stories in the world directly to you.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about YRefi. Did you know that as an accredited investor, when you invest in YRefi, your interest rate is fixed? And did you know that you can invest from 1 to 5 years and you can spread your investment over those terms to best suit your needs? And you have the freedom to take your monthly interest income or reinvest it, whatever you choose. When you invest in YRefi, your interest is calculated daily, you're paid monthly, and should you need your money back early, there is a liquidity feature. Would you like more information? All you have to do is call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST, or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com for complete details. And make sure you review the private placement memorandum and scan this QR code to view the disclosure at your leisure. YRefi, investing in America's future.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
I don't know about you, but I like things the easy way. That's why the Experian app is great. It shows me credit cards based on me and my credit. Right here in the app. Oh, look at that. I just found a new cashback card. Easy. Get the app from your big financial friend. Experian.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
Invest in Ukraine now. Ukraine is rebuilding, innovating, and shaping the future. Because Ukraine is the potential. Kyivstar is Ukraine's leading digital operator. Invests in Ukraine's connectivity, entertainment, ride-hailing, healthcare, and innovation. It's time to think opportunity. It's time to think Ukraine now.
Larry was in a really bad accident and broke his neck. In the line of duty,
I get a phone call early one morning from the Tunnel Towers Foundation. Said, we're going to provide you and your family with a smart home. At that time, I just almost just passed out. I just couldn't believe it.
They heard his story, which means someone's out there listening.
By giving $11 a month, you're joining us on our mission to do good. Go to T2T.org now.
I mean, instead of talking about the content of Trump's 3-hour-long 9th cabinet meeting yesterday, the same number Biden had, mostly headed by Jill, had in 4 years, by the way. The left is running with well, Trump fell asleep during his meeting. This is rich, coming from the same people who propped up the guy who's literally named Sleepy Joe.
What appeared to be Trump having a little difficulty staying awake, seemingly dozing off during some presentations. The White House says what you're seeing here is actually the president, quote, listening attentively and running the entire 3-hour marathon cabinet meeting, unquote. Now, we should say, if he was falling asleep, maybe he was a bit tired from all that time online last night. I don't know if he was dozing off or what, but...
Or listening intently.
Does that what it look like? Does it look like I'm listening intently?
Jake, where were you when you were actively covering this up? You spent 4 years telling us Biden was sharp as a tack, and as the guy's literally walking off into the look, there he is, walking off into the jungle with nobody planned for him to do. He's talking to dead people, and then you turned around and wrote a book about how good you covered it up. Sweet. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called out the New York Times on this perfectly.
You had what was one of the greatest scandals of all time, that the coverage of the Biden administration, Joe Biden's diminished capacity, and the cover-up.
And that's why it's probably fair to raise these questions.
Where was the New York Times? We just had a 3-hour cabinet meeting yesterday, Andrew. For 10 months, the Biden administration did not have a cabinet meeting.
That guy can shut up now. All right, Tony Katz, host of the nationally syndicated Tony Katz Today, and Ashley Brasfield, reporter for the Daily Caller. Ashley, it seems so fast they forget.
Yeah, I'm so glad you hit Jake Tapper. Remember, he did a book partnership for Original Sin for that last administration with Alex Thompson at Axios. Where are you now, Jake Tapper, if you feel so confident that the president was falling asleep during this cabinet meeting? I mean, you lacked on it the last 4 years, but where were you? And I think Scott Bessent is exactly right. You saw a 3-hour cabinet meeting yesterday, I believe, and it was during that he's had one every single month of this year that he's been in as president of the United States, Donald Trump. And the last administration, you remember, there was 10 months without one cabinet meeting, Carl. It's incredible that they
with
continue
Jill
to keep
Biden running the few.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Tony, some of the left's hallucinations on this one, this is hilarious. The DNC chair, Ken Martin, actually thinks Democrats have no problem with Mayo voters after the Democrats picked off a couple off-year election wins in very blue states, by the way. Martin saying, quote, I never want to hear again that the Democrat Party has a problem with young men. We won across the board with every major constituency that left our party last year. The Democrat Party is back. I'm like, no, it's not, because young men voted in 2024. Look, men, especially men under 50, backed Trump by larger margins. Men supported Trump by a wider margin than in 2020. Trump narrowly won the men under age 50, a shift from 2020 when men in that age group favored Biden by 10 points. I mean, weird, right?
I think you got to go the other way with this, Carl. If this lights a fire under the butts of the Republicans to go out there and be aggressive about winning in November 2026, then hot damn thanks, Ken Martin. Let's go do just that. Let's be more aggressive about what it takes to run a country. Let's be more aggressive about talking about where savings are occurring and what we're going to be doing about bringing down other costs. Let's talk more about what we're doing to secure the southern border. Let's talk more about peace. And let's talk more about how the political left absolutely is willing to lie to you, whether it be about Joe Biden's diminished capacity, as you heard Scott Bessent talking about, or a myriad of other things like boys can be girls. Be proactive and get out there and sell your story. They're not doing enough of it. That's clear.
Or, I'm just going to throw this one out there, they could do what they said they were going to do. That would get me to vote for
Well, there's always that.
Yeah, there's always that. I don't know, but I bring that up whenever I can. All right, so Hakeem Jeffries just got all hot and bothered when MS Now, whatever the heck it's called, asked him why Democrats actually throw around the word affordability. Listen to this.
What do you mean by that word when you say it?
Well, listen, Donald Trump's whole life is a scam. The Trump administration is a scam. And certainly the so-called House Republican majority is a scam. These people promised that they were going to lower costs on day one, right? They provided the measuring stick. They made that promise to the American people. And, of course, costs aren't going down. Costs are going up.
I was looking through the interweb to find out the one private sector job that Hakeem Jeffries has ever contributed to anything.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's Hakeem Jeffries here is, explaining exactly why the Democrats really lost the 2024 election. And, it's this thing where you have Zohran Mamdani, who kind of brought this affordability aspect into the races in this last election in November. But you have a lot of this affordability talk, even on the Republican side, but they never offered any solutions. The Biden administration, inflation skyrocketed during that. And so, economics, it takes a little time to kick in, I will say. So you got to give it time. That's what happened in the first administration with Trump, and 2018 was a lot of people's best year. So Hakeem Jeffries is just really just angry at this point. I mean, today he even had to admit that Donald Trump had closed the southern border successfully. So, he's just aggravated and disgruntled, I would say.
He's also not good at anything. Tony Katz, Ashley Brasfield, we got to leave it right there. Thank you. All right, coming up right now, the economy is looking eerily similar, or at least some sectors of the economy could be looking eerily similar to the financial crisis of 2008. But it's not Trump's fault. This has been building for years. We're going to tackle that in a sec.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
From drained investment accounts and stolen tax returns to lost wages and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. That's why only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package, which covers stolen funds, experts and lawyers, and out-of-pocket expenses up to $3 million in total. Don't face the high cost of identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with LifeLock. Join today.
Hurry in for huge savings going on now at Motorhome Specialist, now with 2 locations. Shop and save on over 1,000 motorhomes, starting at $69,995, only at Motorhome Specialist, the #1 motorhome dealer in the world.
When I first decided to invest in gold, I was a bit nervous and unsure how to start. Luckily, I found Noble Gold Investments. From the very first call, they made investing easy. No pushy sales tactics, no gimmicks, and no confusing free silver offers with hidden fees. Just honest advice tailored to my needs, giving me confidence every step of the way. If you're new to gold investing or want a partner you can trust, visit noblegoldinvestments.com.
What do you say? I love you, and I'm alive. Eric was a 50 cal gunner. He wanted to help his fellow soldiers, and he served a total of 4 years. What? Twice, yeah, he did 2 tours in Iraq. He was hit by an armor-piercing round, right above his right ear, exited above his left ear.
They served with honor, and now it's our turn to help them. Join Wounded Warrior Project. Call or go online with your gift of just $19 a month to help America's injured warriors get the life-changing care they need.
Eric wanted a family so bad. That's the hardest thing when he looks at me and he says, when am I going to get married? He's so severely injured, he can't have his own kids. And he's not mad about it, but he's sad sometimes.
He's been through a tough life, and he's come through smiling.
Warriors like Eric need to know that we won't leave them behind. Our donors help us provide life-changing programs and services at no cost to warriors. Please call or go online with your gift of $19 a month, and we'll send you this blanket honoring the 250th anniversary of American independence and freedom.
Wounded Warrior Project, they have not forgotten the sacrifice that our family did.
They still know we're here. That means so much to me, because this is never over.
All the donors who keep believing in Eric, I can't put in words how much it means to him.
Thank you, he says.
The need is urgent. Please give a little to those who gave so much for us.
All right, so delinquency rates and default rates are on mortgages right now, showing trends that could trend towards the similarities before the 2008 financial crisis. But despite what the liberals, and they're going to all scream about this is not something that was created by Trump. This took years to foster. Let me bring you back to 2008. Look at FHA loans. You see that huge hump right there? they were closer to the value of the home with less income requirements and all that stuff in 2008. These shot up by like 10% right before the crash. They went up again in 2020, and then you see the summer of 2025, that only goes to the midsummer. They started to trend upwards again. Okay, because housing prices went through the roof and people couldn't afford them. And now it's even worse. Foreclosures are up 20% as Americans fall behind mortgage payments, many of which took out 5-year interest-only loans 6 years ago in a 1% interest rate environment that is now resetting, or reset a year ago, at 5%. And they can't pay these mortgages because they cost 3 times as much. To compound this, more than half the homes of the United States have dropped in value from the amount that they may have been refinanced on just a year ago, which could incentivize more people to walk away from their mortgage, just like 2008. And this is why Donald Trump has been pushing Jerome Powell so hard to lower the interest rates. It's literally the only option to slow down this train wreck. John Jordan, economist, and E.J. Antoni, founder, chief at Heritage, and founder of Chief Economist. All right, so E.J., I look at this and I'm like, just lower the interest rates, Jerome, and stop being a pain.
Yeah, so part of the problem that we're facing is that if all the Fed does is simply lower the interest rate, we'll have exactly the disaster we had back in the autumn. The Fed did cut rates, but what happened to private market rates, whether it's the 30-year mortgage, whether it was the 10-year Treasury yield? Those rates didn't go down. They actually went up. So the problem is we need the Fed to not only get those rates down, its benchmark rate, but we need them to actually reform what they've been doing in terms of monetary policy, get us back to regular order, essentially, in order to get the private market rates down. But they have no intention of doing that under Powell.
Well, but that's the other thing, John, is they could stop printing so much money.
Yeah, they've largely stopped printing money. The analogy I would draw here is this is more like 1982 than 2008. 2008 was a one-off because of the nature of a lot of the mortgage-backed securities. This is more illustrates the high price of inflation. You know, prices are 20% higher than they were 4.5 years ago for everything. And just because we get inflation under control does not mean that prices actually come down. Wages have to come up to make up for that purchasing power. And this is what's caused a lot of political pain and strained a lot of households. You know, we're having, on the good side, we're having a banging holiday season in terms of retail. We do have interest rates coming down, and we have pro-growth policies in the pipeline. Deregulation, and of course, the big, beautiful bill passed in July is going to make its presence felt next year. 2008 and 1982, you know, it's like hemorrhagic fever and a flu can both have the same symptom, a high fever, but they're very different. Correlation is different from causation. The delinquencies here are due to inflation and household budgets being strained by 5 years of Bidenomics. But eventually, as real wages catch up, it'll get a lot better, just like it did in 1982, 1983.
And EJ, that's another thing, too, is credit card debt is up $163 on average per person, which means that they've been floating all these things and carrying larger balances for the last 1.5 to 2 years, which predate Trump, and now they're starting to crack.
Exactly, Carl. You really hit the nail on the head there. And not only do you have credit card outstanding balances swollen to record levels, but the interest rate on those cards remains just below a record high. And so you
22% of what
if you're lucky. I mean, you have American families right now in aggregate paying over $300 billion a year in financing on their outstanding credit card balances. And so until you do get that catch up in real wages, you're going to continue to have that hemorrhaging.
Yeah, no, it's bad. But John, I got about a minute left here, and this is the craziest part. So the Washington Post, of all places, is telling people now that prices actually are coming down, because they are. I mean, gas just went under $3. Eggs are down about, a third of what they were a year ago. They're telling people, well, you may not want to lower prices. Wait, what mathing did that take place in?
Well, what they're talking about, inflation, you always want inflation a little bit, which is why the Fed's target is 2%. Deflation, where actual prices are coming down, is equally, if not perhaps more painful for the public because it creates a wage spiral, a collapsing demand, and that's the stuff that depressions are made of. So they're blaming President Trump for they want to have it both ways, for not bringing prices down when in fact all you're doing is arresting the rate of growth. President Trump's policies are about raising real wages now to increase Americans' purchasing power. But there's a little bit of a lag there. Once you get inflation under control, like Paul Volcker did with President Reagan early in his first term, it took a while for those real wages to catch up. And that's when 1983, and of course President Reagan's landslide reelection was due in no small part to that in 1984.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing. Trump can create the growth, so let's see what happens. EJ, John, appreciate it. All right, coming up, the CDC is scheduled to weigh in on a major change to how we vaccinate our children. This is a long time coming. Next.
It all started in 2022 when the Biden administration weaponized the U.S. dollar and imposed sanctions upon Russia. Central banks around the globe moved out of dollar-denominated assets and into gold. Jamie Dimon said gold could easily go to $5,000 or $10,000 an ounce. Gold recently surpassed its inflation-adjusted all-time high. Silver's inflation-adjusted all-time high is $209 an ounce.
Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 1-800-778-4156.
Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide, home of the No Fee for Life IRA. See how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver.
Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
Greg trusts Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
Hi, I'm Greg. I live in Bloomington, Illinois. I'm not an actor. I'm just a regular person. 8 years ago, I just didn't feel like I was on my game. I started taking Prevagen, and I want people to know that Prevagen has worked for me. Give it a try. I want it to help you just like it has helped me. I've been taking Prevagen for 8 years now, and it's still helping me tremendously.
Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years.
Hi, I'm Wade Allen Root, the national TV and radio host known as the MAGA warrior and the capitalist evangelist. This presidency is ushering in the golden age of prosperity, and it's all built around making America the energy capital of the world. Enter Lost Soldier Oil and Gas. It took 40 years to piece together this 40,000-acre giant gas discovery. It's estimated to contain up to 6 trillion cubic feet of gas, with a management forecast projecting the first 25 wells alone to produce 400 million cubic feet per day of natural gas. This is how we power the AI future of America with clean natural gas. Headed by oil and gas legend Mark Bruner, whose previous public companies delivered spectacular returns for investors at their peaks. Pedico Energy grew about 100 to 1 for investors. Ultra Petroleum grew about 1,000 to 1 for investors. To learn more about Lost Soldier Oil and Gas, scan the QR code on the screen or go to lostsoldier.com. That's lostsoldier.com.
Radical jihadists are not done. Iran promises death to America. They've built sleeper terror cells in the U.S. They support terror groups out to destroy Israel, including Hamas, whose founding charter calls for Islam to dominate the world.
The young people have been educated to believe that the most sacred thing they do is stab a Christian in the heart.
The only democracy in the Middle East that supports religious freedom is Israel. Standing for freedom, not terror.
Okay, tomorrow is CDC holding a meeting that could have a major impact on the future of the childhood vaccination schedule. CDC advisors may vote to potentially delay the dose of the Hep B vaccine that is given to newborns, usually within like a few days of them being born. This would postpone the dose potentially even years. Now, the doctor in charge of the CDC's Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices saying, quote, "We try to avoid giving things to the most vulnerable. We want to test these things incredibly thoroughly before we give in to them, especially in a neonatal period or in a pregnant mother. So these things that we have a very high suspicion of." Former director of the CDC, Dr. Robert Redfield, and pediatrician Dr. Joe Warsh. All right, so Dr. Redfield, a lot of us have been saying Hep B, Hep C, all these things, like an infant's not having sex for 15, 20 years. Why are we giving them some of these vaccines right out the gate?
I think it's a very good question, and I think the ACIP will obviously address that tomorrow. What's the right timing of the hepatitis B vaccine? I happen to be of the point of view that it would be probably more appropriate to give that vaccine to children between the ages of 10 and 12, along with the human papillomavirus vaccine. But we'll see how the committee debates it.
Yeah, no, I think it's wise to reconsider these things. And I feel like a lot of people at the CDC up until recently just went, well, we've always done it this way. So, Dr. Warsh, is it time to reimagine a lot more things, too?
I think it is. I think it's really important that we are open to discussing everything. I think we have to go back to the table and look at risks versus benefits. It seems like the discussion on vaccines has always been, at least in the last few decades, only about the benefits, never really discussing the risks. And Hep B is a perfect example of that. We set the stage for parents where there's a lot of adversarial discussion in that first day of life because a lot of parents don't feel like that vaccine is warranted and the pediatrician's pushing it on them. And so I think
we'll talk about SIDS too.
Talk about that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like sudden infant death syndrome, there's big concerns now. What's it caused by? But anyway, I want to get to this, Dr. Redfield. The FDA Commissioner Marty McKay recently said that data shows that 10 children died due to the COVID vaccine shots. And we know children really weren't affected by COVID nearly any extent that their adult counterparts were. But Markey's comments coming after the New York Times reported on FDA internal memo, which the FDA vaccine director Vinay Prasad claimed for the first time in the U.S. the FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. Safe and effective, sir?
Yeah, I think it's very important for the FDA now to be transparent about the vaccine injuries that were caused by the mRNA vaccines because they're very real. I have a clinical practice now in dealing with long COVID, but the other part of my practice is dealing with vaccine injury. I have a lot of confidence in Marty McCary, and I think he's going to finally open up and be transparent. I think they actually said that at least 10 children they feel had died as a consequence of the mRNA vaccines. And as they complete their evaluation, they may even find more.
Yeah, but Dr. Warsh, the talking point was like, look, I did not get vaccinated. I fought it to the very end. And then I said, yeah, I'm a pretty healthy guy. I'm just going to roll the dice and not do this. However, a lot of children, they're children. They do what their mom's told. But some schools almost, they forced kids to do this, knowing full well that COVID did not affect younger kids the way it affected adults.
That's correct. And I think that's where we need to go back and look at the messaging, look at the public health structure and the way that things were forced, which I think is unreasonable and shouldn't ever happen again. And we need to weigh risk versus benefits. We have to think about this, think about what we do and don't know, and we shouldn't be forcing something on kids when there's mild risk. So I think it's very good that they're looking at this again, and it's important.
And Dr. Redfield, though, the people like me who see this, like I don't personally know any children who died of the COVID vaccine, but I want people to go to jail for this because someone somewhere had to know this was going down.
It definitely was a huge policy mistake. These vaccines should never have been mandated. I think CDC, the ACIP finally got it right in their last meeting where they moved the recommendation for the COVID vaccine to really be for people over the age of 65. They've gotten a lot of pushback of that by the American Academy of Pediatrics and Obstetrics, but I think they're just incorrect. This vaccine, as you pointed out, there really isn't any benefit for people that are not vulnerable under 65. The benefit is for those people like myself, where it can prevent serious illness and death. The vaccine does not prevent infection. Right. So that was another misleading the American public when people, even President Biden said, vaccinate your children so they don't infect grandma. That was not a true statement.
Yeah, Dr. Redfield, Dr. Walsh, I got to leave it right there, but we do appreciate your insight on this very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. God bless.
Before we go, we've all seen someone drunk as a skunk, but have you ever seen a trashed panda? Well, you will next.
Big news. Newsmax just went public on the New York Stock Exchange and listed on the big board. Millions of Americans like you are joining our news revolution. Reuters Institute says Newsmax is one of the top 12 news brands in America. 40 million Americans go to Newsmax all the time, and its audience grew 50% since the same time last year. Millions really are making the switch to Newsmax. If you want to be a Newsmax share owner, call your broker advisor or get more info at newsmaxinvest.com. Stand with Newsmax today for a strong America.
When Betty and George turned 50, they figured out that switching 2 unlimited lines from big wireless to consumer cellular could save people up to $600 a year. So they made the switch and started splurging on date night. And it became their favorite night. No, don't you dare. It's an acquired taste. If you're over 50, get 2 unlimited lines for $30 each. And right now, get your second month free. Call Consumer Cellular.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
Hi folks, I'd like to tell you about YRefi. Did you know that as an accredited investor, when you invest in YRefi, your interest rate is fixed? And did you know that you can invest from 1 to 5 years and you can spread your investment over those terms to best suit your needs? And you have the freedom to take your monthly interest income or reinvest it, whatever you choose. When you invest in YRefi, your interest is calculated daily, you're paid monthly, and should you need your money back early, there is a liquidity feature. Would you like more information? All you have to do is call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST, or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com for complete details. And make sure you review the private placement memorandum and scan this QR code to view the disclosure at your leisure. YRefi, investing in America's future.
Oh, snap. Who's been in the booze? This isn't funny. Employees at the Virginia liquor store returned to work after their Thanksgiving break to find dozens of their low-shelf liquor smashed in the aisles of puddles of alcohol everywhere. And they caught the masked bandit red-handed. Kinda-ish. Employees found a raccoon, a trash panda, in a position we have all been in, most of us have been in, passed out, fairly inebriated, in the bathroom near the toilet, like college kids at a Panama beach during spring break or something like that. Too many SoCo limes. The Hanover County Animal Protection and the shelter took the trash panda in, and he was sobered up, and then they released him safely back into the wild, where rumor has it he shares a den with Hunter Biden. Too bad his crime didn't committed 11 months ago, Rob, so he could have been pardoned by the auto pen.
The trash panda.
Yeah.
Wow.
You never heard of raccoon called the trash panda?
I've never heard that before.
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorites.
Raccoon.
Anyway, do
That's
serious
funny.
stuff.
All right, Carl, good to see you. We'll try to do some serious stuff.